So first we're gonna begin with this little quick clip that I took out of a book where it says Aquarius at the time of the winter solstice have described the fire of the societal sun as hiding in, being born in, and rising out of the celestial waters of the constellation Aquarius. So just to show you another one real quick. So here again, the winter solstice was long in the waters of Aquarius, in which the year began and ended. Right. So when you think of the winter solstice, right, we think of you know, as far as us being let's say being in America, right? Winter, cold, darkness, and we also know that the sun is actually reborn. You know, it dies and then it's reborn. So when I first basically realized that around like 4000 BC, right? When Aquarius was in the winter solstice, where the sun entered Aquarius at the winter solstice in 4000 BC, that pretty much marked the four royal stars, the cherubs. Was it the man, the eagle, the bull, and the lion? Right, it formed the cross. So that would put Leo in the summer solstice. That would put Taurus in the spring equinox, and that would put Scorpio as the eagle in the vernal equinox. So I started to realize that that probably means to me, as far as Aquarius being, you could basically see like the ruler of the winter solstice at that time period, that it represented the dead, right? And Scorpio, for example, right, is known for being like the sign of like sex, death, and rebirth, right? We know in the fall, for example, we know the sun gets weakened, start losing its power, the leaves start falling, nature starts getting weakened or whatever. I came to realize that death and the dead is basically not the same, right? So I realized that Scorpio, for example, is not the ruler of the dead, right? So, for example, when the sun is entering like Scorpio, right? We know from like myth and other, texts that Scorpio is the one that actually stings the sun, right? It wounds it, and Ophiuchus, that's standing on top of Scorpio, that's holding the snake, right? He was known as the healer, and he was able to bring I can't necessarily say the dead back to life, but I know he was healing the wounded, right? So Scorpio will actually cause the wounds, and Ophiuchus will actually be the one to heal the wounds. So I realized that it's like Scorpio is the one that actually does the orphan, right? He's the one that commits the M word, right? He does the K word, and let's say if you get wounded, and you actually don't survive, right? So the sun actually goes through its process as far as being transported further through the underworld, right? In the boat, the cargo boat. So the cargo boat will actually be Sagittarius, for example, right? In Mesopotamia, right? Sagittarius is also known as the cargo boat. So you get transferred across, the waters. I believe what's that? The river Styx, right? You in the underworld, and you go to your final place, right? Your resting place, and so on, as a spirit or something, right? So we know, for example, say like in the winter solstice, we know the sun does its 3 days standstill, right? And then it rises and stuff like that. And this is where you get, what's that? December 23rd, and then you get to the 25th, something like that, or it's probably December 22nd to the 25th. I think the 3 days, right? So they say when the person passed, right, it's supposed to take like 3 days for the soul to actually like go about his business, right? So let's say if you say that Scorpio does the K word, right? And then, the person is now he's, you know, deceased. He got to go through this process, right? So you say 3 months or three, say, signs from Scorpio, right? It'll be Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius. So the sun would get to its final place in Aquarius, for example, after it became wounded and passed, say in Scorpio, right? So that started to make me think that, no wonder, right? Aquarius is actually pictured as a canopic jar. So I'm gonna show you the canopic jar that Aquarius is usually depicted in. So here, this is called an Egyptian plain sphere. And as you can see right here on the right in the corner, right, Aquarius is known as Canopicum, right? He's a canopic jar. So you can see him as being a jar. You see the head, you see the feet. Now some people say that this is water. But to me, this look like leaves, right? But I think it's basically a combination. But before I get to that though, but as you can see, right, he's a canopic jar. I'm gonna show you another one. So here go another one right here. Here go another one. He's up here in the top, right? So here it says right here, right? In the Egyptian zodiac, cannabis, with his picture and cubit of justice, is the evident prototype of Aquarius with his urn. Right? So this gets kind of tricky, and it's gonna be a little bit difficult to explain, like in its entirety. But just to probably make it short, cannabis is basically a canopic jar, right? We know that the canopic jars is usually for the deceased, right? I guess their organs and stuff like that being the jars, right? But there's a book that I have seen, or I should say read, right, where the Peruvians in America, they also had canopic jars, but it was called the canopa, right? So the canopa was basically used to be put like next to the deceased, right? So they would have like, I guess whatever they have in the afterlife, and give them blessings. And I guess they used to put like leaves or plants and stuff like inside of the jars, and it would grow out of the jars or whatever. Or they make like holes and stuff like that, and they put seeds in it, and then the plants would grow, right? So let's just get to that little screenshot real quick. So here, for example, let me see. The Peruvians, the Canapa, right? Let me see. So right here it says the rule which has been used all throughout the treaties must be brought in once more to decide the question: did Egypt give the Canapa to Peru, or did Peru give it to Egypt? Right? Then it says, but there cannot be two opinions about the decisions. It is too plain for dispute. The Canapa of Peru is a simple funeral object by which the people of the land exhibit their, I guess that was that final regard for deceased ancestors. On the other hand, the Egyptians have turned the Canapa into a captain of a ship, or they may have made of it a god. So the canopus jar or canopus, right? We know that throughout myth, there's two canopus. There's a canopus who's a captain of a ship, and then there's the canopus who's supposed to be a god, right? So mind you, we dealing with mythology here, and so we just seen Aquarius as the canopic jar, right? We seen the leaves and stuff coming out of him, whatever. Or some people say that is water. So we could actually confirm what exactly it is in this text right here. So right here, for example, right in the Babylonian zodiac cuneiform and translation text, right? We see that Aquarius, for example, is called Gu, right? Number 11, right? So we're going to go to the cuneiform definition. So remember, we've seen the cuneiform. That's number 502 in this book, right? Gu, a plant, right? Then it has like other like meanings and stuff like that, but we're gonna stick with Gu real quick. So here, right, now that it starts breaking down what Gu actually means, so it says explain the sign as a compound of number 228 and 70, meaning full of death, right? So it starts talking about like a type of plant and so on. Now mind you, this is Babylonian, right? So it goes down here to say gula, right? That is this plant and an overflowing jar, right? So we see that gu means plant and la actually means a vessel, right? An overflowing jar. So we just seen the canopic Aquarius, right? And the Egyptian plains fed that he's a jar that has either leaves that look like leaves or water coming out of it. You know what I'm saying? So that is telling me right there that either the Egyptians must have copied from the Peruvians, even though I did kind of forget to show that the Peruvians, as far as in the text, to show you the text, that they was putting seeds and stuff like that inside of the canopod, like on the sides or whatever, however they was doing it, and it would grow. You know what I'm saying? Like plants, and evidently they had to water the canopod. You know, so it was for the deceased. See what I mean? So we got past that first part as far as the canopic jar, you know, and Aquarius having a slight um correspondence to the dead. So we're gonna dig a little bit more deeper, and see if we can actually confirm, this is an actual either fact or at least some theories that that may probably could back it up, maybe. So we're gonna dig a little deeper and see what's next. So here's a Greek myth of a boy named Haius, right? He was a minor god, right, of seasonal rains, heralded by the rising of the constellation of Aquarius. He was a brother of the Hyades, the rain nymphs, and son of the sky-bearing Titan Atlas. It says, as a young boy, Haius was killed by a lion while fetching water, and was afterwards placed among the stars as the constellation Aquarius. His 5 morning sisters and lion were also elevated to the sky as the constellation Hyades and Leo. Aquarius and Leo do not share the sky at the same time. One sets as the other rises, an internal chase playing out in the heavens. Then another part, it says, when darkening twilight ushers in the night, the whole flock of Hyades is revealed. Taurus, right? Face gleams with 7 rays of fire, which Greek sailors call Hyades from the rain word. So that's pretty much should be the Pleiades, the 7 sisters. But here it says 5. So I'm assuming they probably could have only seen 5 at the time. But we know now that there's actually supposed to be 7 of them up there, right? Or at least that we know of, as far as I guess bright enough to see. So it's counted 7. So pretty much, again, Aquarius is actually killed in this one, right? So he dies, and he gets put up in the sky, right? Now, the Ganymede story is just like this, right? So there's actually 2 Ganymede stories, right? He gets snatched up by Zeus, whatever like that. He becomes the cupbearer, and then there's another part where they said that he actually gets killed, and I guess they must have told the father that I forgot. I'm not too sure if it was Zeus must have just brought him up there or something like that to Olympus without telling the father that he actually died. It was something like that, right? But it was 2 stories, whatever. So we got another K word, right, from Haius and the Ganymede theme. Okay, so here we gonna kind of like pick it up a little bit, right? So this is an Assyrian calendar. So number 11, of course, it goes in order, as far as like the zodiac signs, right, from Aries all the way to Pisces. So number 11 here is called Hubar, the river of the underworld, right? So let's find out what the river of the underworld actually is. So the Hubar, right, is a Sumerian term meaning river, watercourse, or netherworld. It is usually the river of the netherworld. So we have a river in the netherworld. This is the underworld we're talking about, right? So what is Aquarius doing in the netherworld? So here again we have Sumerian mythology, right? The harbor, a Sumerian term meaning river, watercourse, or netherworld, is equivalent to the river Styx in Greek myth. It is usually the river of the netherworld or river of paradise. Down here it says the river Euphrates has been identified with the harbor as the source of fertility in Sumer. This Babylonian river of creation has been linked to the late Hebrew river of paradise. So mind you, this is talking about the underworld, right? So there's a paradise in the underworld. Now, if you remember, or if you ever heard of Hades, right? There's supposed to be a river in Hades, right? To where I think it separates, like say like the horrible things that's supposed to be going down in the underworld, and then you have another section of the underworld to where I guess it's supposed to be like paradise, right? So what is it basically trying to say here, right? So is the river Styx similar to the Sumerian harbor? Apparently it is. So we're gonna dig a little deeper and see. So here it says, while Styx, the river of the underworld in Greek mythology, is a river goddess, depictions of her in ancient art are rare, with most representations shown in connection with Thetis trying to make her son Achilles immortal by dipping him in the Styx. So there's basically like only one depiction of Styx, and that's the picture. I guess the mother of Achilles was holding the baby next to Styx, and it has Styx depicted as a woman in the artwork. So again, we got the river Styx is a significant entity in Greek mythology, serving as both a river in the underworld and a goddess. It represents the boundary between the living and the dead, and the gods swore binding oaths by its water. The Styx also refers to a real-world subterranean river within Oregon Caves National Monument. Interesting. So we see that the river Styx, right, serves as both a river in the underworld and a goddess. So there's another myth about the underworld, right? And there's a goddess that actually supposed to actually dwell down there. So we're gonna read about that right now. So we got in Sumerian mythology, the river of the underworld, also known as the river of death, was a boundary between the realm of the living and the underworld of Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. So it just basically confirmed that the river Styx and the river of the underworld, right, in both myths is pretty much the same. It's the same place. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? So there really isn't no depictions of Erishka girl either, right? This is one, I guess, depiction they think is her. Is that lady with the bird feet with the wings standing on the lion, right? Some people think that's actually Ishtar or whatever. Some people might say that it's Erishka girl, right? But it's not a fact, right? Because from my understanding, there's no actual text that basically describes what Erishka girl looks like. I think in one text, I think it was either Enki and Erishka girl. I think they went out to go swim or something like that, and something had happened to where she either got dragged to the underworld or something like that. So as far as a description, they just basically said that they went out to go swim. So I mean, I don't know if she's supposed to be like a fish type deity or whatever the case may be, because they say Enki is like a sometimes he's described as a fish god and so on. So who knows if they were both fishes or whatever the case may be. But as far as a description of Erishka girl, it wasn't really described. So we know that the river Styx, for example, right? She's described as a goddess in a river. So it's a possibility that Erishka girl, right, is actual the river too in the Sumerian myth. That's probably why there's really no depictions of her, because I mean, it's like, how do you actually draw or describe like a woman being like some type of river goddess without, like, I don't know. I mean, they probably could at least show her like in the water or something like that, or at least by it, but they didn't even attempt to even make that a possibility. So that could be the case, man. But we're gonna move on real quick. So, as Queen of the Kur, Erishka girl's role as a deity was primarily focused on death and rituals connected to the ending of someone's life. The main role of this goddess was to look after the souls of the dead and to act as a barrier between life and death, ensuring that the living and the dead did not interact. So we see that the river Styx, right, is another boundary between the living and the dead. We know that the harbor river, right, it was another boundary. And here it just explained another boundary between the living and the dead. So what's actually happening here, right? So again, if the theory is, my theory I should say, is correct, right? As far as, remember, Aquarius being in the winter solstice, 4000 BC, right? You could basically say like that is like a barrier, right? It's like you got the dead, and then when you get to the spring, right, it's the living. You know what I mean? And then I believe, I think it's like Egypt. They only have like 2 seasons. They only have winter and summer, right? So I guess the spring is included in the summer, and the fall is basically included in the winter. So I guess I think they have like two seasons basically. So that's like, say, like 6 signs of like say summer, then you got 6 signs of winter, right? It's half and half and all that. So as far as like the dead, now remember I was saying how Scorpio is really like the one that does like the K, right, and the M's, right? It's Scorpio is like a war, like, you know what I'm saying, like a war god type. So usually some people will probably try to put like, say, like a Rishka Gall and say, yeah, that's probably Scorpio, because when they think of like, or when they see like the word death, right, they automatically think it's Scorpio or whatever, right? But like I said, is a difference between, like, death and the dead, right? It appears that Scorpio doesn't really deal with the dead. You know what I'm saying? Because we know that the dead is actually the resting. It's the final, right? You resting. So we know in the winter solstice, right? We know that that's the rest. You know what I'm saying? And it's inactive, right? Nothing is basically flourishing in the wintertime. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's everything seems to be deceased, right? There's no action and stuff like that. Um, the Earth is sleeping. Well, it depends, the hemisphere, whatever the case may be, right? And then it fully comes back to life in the spring. So when you in the underworld, for example, when you're deceased, right? So you could say like, boom, you're a soul, right? So you wandering around in the underworld until you come back into a physical body, like in the spring, right? Because everything starts to become like physical again. You know what I mean? So it's like, while you in the underworld as a spirit, or whatever the case may be, or even wandering there on Earth, for example, right? If you come out of the, to say the underworld and shit like that, or another world. Even though in all reality, it really is no such thing as like no underworld and under, but I guess it's like, it paints a picture. But in the spring, let's say, things materialize, and which is interesting because, like Taurus is is a physical sign. It's a material, like, you know what I'm saying? So it materializes. Or so like to say that the soul materializes, but before then, like, you still, a spirit and a soul, whatever the case may be, right? So you're the dead. So the Aquarius situation is what makes it so difficult to really, like, for example, right? You pouring out the water, right? That's what they got Aquarius pouring out the water and stuff, right? Into a fish mouth. So when you see Aquarius, you start thinking like, okay, like what kind of like, what is this trying to tell us, or what is this? So we also know, for example, right, that we're supposed to be pouring out libations and stuff like that, and having like, certain types of rituals for the dead, or that's what they do, right? They pour out, libations for the deceased, out of a jar. So Aquarius could actually be really represented as actually pouring out libations for the dead. Because again, the ancients could have pretty much just, create like clouds and have rain coming down from the clouds. I mean, it's that simple, right? And put a man in the sky and stuff like that, and all that, right? You're gonna have somebody carrying a small little jar, talking about like this is rain and floods is coming out of this little jar, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, these guys is too intelligent, or weren't too intelligent to really make something like appear like that, and have this big significance, and like, I mean, they, if anything, they could have did way better than that. So I don't think, yeah, maybe the seasonals, it probably depending on where you are on the earth, and different cultures and stuff, they borrow, and not everybody climate is the same, So you got to come up with like different types of I guess stories to fit the constellations and the seasons of wherever you at. But that's what makes sense to me. You know what I'm saying? Especially like, and when you read certain descriptions of Aquarius, right? What they always say, right? He has an urn, right? They specifically saying an urn, so it's like we know what urns is for, right? Urns is for either ashes of the deceased. You know what I'm saying? Um, you could put flowers inside of a pot, and you leave it for the deceased. You bring certain types of plants and stuff like that for the deceased. So we really talked about the canopic and the canapa of Peru. You know what I'm saying? So all those little things right there were signs all this time, at least to me. And it was letting me know, like, wow, like I think Aquarius actually really is I'm gonna say a underworld deity, or I'm gonna say a deity of the dead, right? So not to really just say underworld, because what I'm saying, and there's really no such thing. But as far as like the dead, yeah, there really is a such thing. You know what I mean? The shadow realm and stuff like that. So I think that's probably one of the many reasons to where people really can't figure Aquarians out, because when you really think about it, right? They say Aquarians is cold or they're distant, and you can't really figure them out because I mean they're dead. You know what I'm saying? That's just what it is. They're dead. Is you know, oh, they cold hearted, and they don't seem to be this, they don't seem to be that, or he's too quiet and he's always by himself and he's like, da da da. I mean, to me, again, the winter solstice, right? 4000 BC, right? It's like, to me, it's in its proper place, right? That's where it belongs. The depictions, the canopy, the canopic, some of the explanations that it's telling you, the river Styx, the river of the underworld. Like, I mean, it's telling you right there. I mean, it's been there in our faces all this time, right? So we got a little bit more, and we're gonna wrap this up, right? So here, this is very, 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 very interesting right here. So this is supposed to be the god, I guess, Hia, right? Also known as Ea or Enki. So it says one of the most important of all the Assyrian gods, as he combines in his numerous titles the attributes of several classic deities. His Akkadian name was Enki, or the Lord of the World, the Earth, right? And his Assyrian name read phonetically Ea or Hia. He unites in his office the attributes of Pluto, Hades, or Poseidon, Neptune. So that's a combination of the underworld and a sea god, right? And of Hermes of wisdom, right? Hia, as the representative of the Greek Poseidon, was lord of the abyss. The Abzu, right? Then it says he was spoken of as he who dwells in the great deep. In a list of his titles, he is called Lord of the Madudu, or sailors, and it was he who taught Hasis Adra how to build an ark or ship. So that would be Noah, right? In which he sailed over the flood. And in this character of the god of water and ocean, he was associated with a female deity, Bahu, the void, who may be identified with the Bahu of Genesis 1. He held dominion over a large number of spirits who dwelled in the Abzu of the deep. In the character of the Greek Pluto or Hades, he himself figured but seldom, but his consort Ninkigal, the lady of the the great land, appears very frequently. He, as Lord of Hades, had the name of Nin-Azu, and his wife called Ninkigal, wife of Nin-Azu. But it was in the character of the God of wisdom, the God who knows all things, that he figured most prominently Ninni-Miki, Lord of Wisdom, or as the Akkadian expressed it, Lord of the Bright Eye. It was he alone who could deliver man from various spells and curses with which the complicated system of Chaldean magic beset him. He also delivered Ishtar from the power of Ninkigal and the legend of her descent into Hades. He had for his female consort in his character of Lord of Wisdom, the goddess Davkina. The female was that deification of the earth was probably only another form of Ninkigal and resembled the classic Persephone, or was that Proserpine, through perhaps Ninkigal and Devkina may be better identified with Persephone or Ceres Demeter, the mother and daughter of the Greeks. So Ninkigal is Ereshkigal. You know what I'm saying? Is Ereshkigal. Because remember Ishtar, when she descended into the other world, she had tried to confront her sister Ereshkigal about, her trying to take over Ereshkigal's throne and so on, and she got stripped and she got put on the hook, and then Enki came to save her and stuff like that, and you know but yeah, it's telling you right there, you know what I'm saying? It's Bahu, another one, right? Is they all the same deities, is, you know they just got different like attributes and functions and stuff like that. And usually most of the times, like, the same deity or the wife is basically the same. It's just a female counterpart. You know what I'm saying? So you could basically say like it's maybe like either like a masculine and a feminine aspect of like the same type of you know what I'm saying, deity and stuff like that, whether if it's man or female. So that's why it be seeming so crazy when you be reading it. You be like, and then you be thinking that it's actually like different individuals when it's really the same person, but the names has them. It's like a character, right? That's like, say if you were, you are who you are, right? You got many different characteristics to you. You know what I'm saying? And each one of your characteristics, it will have a name, and it would seem like it's a different, totally individual. You know what I'm saying? But it's basically, a characteristic within the same person. That's all it really basically be. But we're gonna go back to that void real quick, right? Because the void, that part is very, very important, because the void, in some cases, is basically like the underworld, or sometimes some people would say like the void would be like space or the air, or it'll be like, again, like they said, the abyss, right? The abyss would be like the deep of the ocean and so on, or sometimes it'll be under the ocean, so there's really no set like say like location to it, or whatever. It's like, to basically say where the abyss is, or what's really the void. But we're gonna go to the void and we're gonna see more correlations with that, right? Dealing with the Aquarius. So here, remember it said Bahu, and the void, in relation to Genesis 1. So we see in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So that's the void, right? Then we got the Spirit hovering over the waters. So mind you, we just had these deities that's supposed to be in either the underworld or in the void, right? In the great land, right? It's a big space. That's what it's basically saying. It's a gigantic space of something, either emptiness, right? And so here, for example, right, it goes down to where I guess in the Chinese constellations, right? They deal with moon mansions and stuff like that. So a moon mansion is 7 mansions, I guess, to like each zodiac sign, right? It's like small little constellations, how they linked up in the sign, for example, right? But we're gonna get to that in a second. But here it says, for example, right, that I guess that's Hiyu, as we have learned, may be translated as vacuum. And the name of the goddess Bahu, right? We just read her as far as being in the void in the last description. Let's see. Bahu bears the name signification as the Hebrew word translated in Genesis 1 by void. So again, we basically have Bahu, we got the void, and then we got Aquarius again, right? So we know that the what's this HIU, I'm gonna say Hue, right, is another location in the Aquarius in the Chinese constellation, right? So again, so it just confirmed to us that what we've been reading as far as like the void and all that, and I guess like the underworld. But is it really actually pretty much like the same? And so what is like the void in the for the Chinese? Like what else they got going on, right? So we're gonna check it out right now. So here in one of the mansions, right, is the void right here. So for example, it says the deity, right? Well, let's see Chinese name, right? The HSU. I'm not even sure that's even the same word as the next one, but let me see. So deity, for example, it says the patron deity of sextons and cemeteries. So we know a sexton is an individual that actually like cleans up and he maintains the churches, I believe, and the cemeteries. And I guess he does. I forgot what other type of functions that he actually do, but he's a maintainer. You know what I'm saying? He makes sure whatever he's supposed to do, but he maintains it. So we got the word cemetery in there. That's for the dead. The cemeteries is for the dead. That's where the dead. That's where the dead lies at, and that's where they rest. That's their final resting place. You see what I mean? So there's more mansions. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna dig a little bit more deep into the Chinese mansions and see what else they got to say. So here, for example, right, is the Chinese associations, lunar mansions, right? So the start of Aquarius, it starts from the 10th Chinese lunar mansion, right? So it says girl, I got it, highlighted and stuff like that, as a maid servant. Keep in mind, a maid servant, right? It's a female, right? A maid servant. boom, emptiness, right? The 11th lunar mansion, symbolizing a place of desolation and darkness, connected with funerals and mourning. Then we go down, right? We got Fenmu, a burial place. Then we got Zhu Liang, representing a mausoleum, apparently for departed emperors. Right? Then it says two small other constellations in the same area continue the theme of death and mourning, namely Q or Ki, weeping, and Ku, crying. Each consisting of two stars, another star in the northern Aquarius, identities uncertain, were seeming a deity governing life and death. And then here we got the the soldiers and stuff like that, the royal guards of Yulin Jun. Down here is another star in Aquarius. I think it's connected to like other constellations around it too. It's like an axe, execution axe. But pretty much the ones that's highlighted, well, besides the one, the army. I'm not really too sure if the army is basically of the dead too that they put up there. I'm really not too sure. But as far as the ones that we can actually really know for a fact that as representing death, crying, and stuff like that, right? So it's telling you that within these mansions and stuff like that, it's a place of desolation, funerals, mourning, crying. You know what I'm saying? And it was kind of funny that it's actually a maidservant that's, as part of one of the mansions is right next to it. Even though she has like other functions, but it's still kind of like a coincidence. So, Zhu, emptiness, for example, is basically another word for like void. You know what I'm saying? Because remember, it's the 11th mansion. So we read in the other thing, the 11th mansion and the deity, the sextons, and cemeteries. You know what I'm saying? So remember, these are the mansions that's in the Aquarius in the for the Chinese constellations. You know what I'm saying? These are basically like stars that's, connected to whatever the case may be, that's, within that boundary and stuff like that of Aquarius. So we just basically read from different cultures, right? As Aquarius dealing with like the theme of either the underworld, the dead. We didn't even get to the spirits yet, but let's get to the spirits real quick. Hold on, before I get to the spirits, I forgot all about this right here. I'm telling you, it goes on and on and on. I might have to probably do this video over because, I mean, I had everything thought out, but I didn't actually like strategize it properly and map everything out to where I could really just go in the flow with things and organize it properly. But so this is from another book. So I just basically just clip little portions, that actually stuck out that I could just read real quick and instead of reading like the whole entire paragraph or the whole page and stuff like that. So it may seem a little choppy, but just try to just bear with me here. So basically this has to do with Egypt, right? in the pyramids. Now, I don't know where this guy was getting this information from and what he was actually seeing when he was inside of the pyramid, but apparently he was seeing, like, I guess, like these hieroglyphs and these pictograms or whatever the case may be, and it was telling him, I guess, a whole bunch of stuff, whatever, right? But so he gets to the, I guess, to the Aquarius part, and he starts correlating stuff, and he starts talking about how, like, for example, right, it says Aquarius appears to be the starry symbol for the scriptural bottomless pit. So we heard about the bottomless pit, or we read about the bottomless pit in the scripture, right? Is where, I guess, all the dam's supposed to be at. You know what I'm saying? But we know scripture is kind of like it has other different types of, like, beliefs and stuff like that in there, right? It's not really one dimensional. It kind of, like, shifts and stuff like that. So then it says, and contains also many symbols of death, as evident by the Egyptian symbolism. Let me see what else. Okay, here again, the bottomless pit chamber outlined in Aquarius is quite well marked and really suggests such a place as the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid, right? For the wavy lines, and so right there is basically talking about the bottomless pit, the subterranean chamber. So this is all correlation with Aquarius again, right? So remember the subterranean chamber, right? It's saying of the Great Pyramid. So Aquarius is in that location, right? He's in the location of the subterranean chamber. So mind you, we just was talking about the void, the underworld, and so on and all that, right? In other texts, right? So what else we got here? It says the light of the theory at hand, for it is slowly approaching the zodiacal constellation Aquarius, which is the symbolism of the arrangement of the Great Pyramid, evidently has its counterpart in the subterranean chamber. It, with its attendant shafts, as we shall show later, appears as the symbol of the bottomless pit, also of the end of time, right? Let's see what it says down here. The vernal equinox is symbolic of birth, but lends an added beauty to the springtime of our yearly journey around the sun, since we know it marks the time at which all nature awakens to fresh, tender life. The advent of the vernal equinox into the region of Aquarius during the present course of the coming century need not necessarily imply that it will be attended by the final cataclysm. Wow. Here again, let me see. I guess it's talking about the fish, and it says borders of Aquarius, very evidently determination of the lower passage of their earthly counterpart. For we believe the constellation Aquarius to symbolize the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid. Let me see. The region immediately surrounding Aquarius has been commonly termed the ocean of the sky, perhaps on account of containing so many constellations named for aquatic sources, such as Cognomen, is certainly in accordance with many of the characteristics of the region other than just that name. Then it says, it does not appear strange then that the dead were supposed to make use of a boat in passing through this region of the heaven, hence the boat of the dead. So again, man, these texts is telling us that Aquarius is actually, to generalize it, or how they say, like, romanticize it, right, is basically the god of the dead. You know what I'm saying? The god of the underworld. He's it's him. It's really him. He's really in that place. You know what I'm saying? Now, this is what I actually also think, right? To where, because not too many people actually read these books that be talking about like zodiac signs, or either they be reading tarot cards and all kinds of stuff, right? You know, most tarot readers say, you know, they don't even really know anything about the zodiac signs. They just could read the tarot. Then you got some that have a little bit of knowledge of the zodiac signs. You got some that know about the zodiac signs. But I'm not basically saying that they should know every single thing and read all these books that has like different types of, like, you know, from different cultures and so on, whatever the case may be. But the point I'm trying to make is that I've read plenty of books to where it's, you know, these individuals are saying that they don't understand, you know, why Aquarius is this, or why is he that, and then we'll have so many different types of like characteristics and attributes for things that seem just to don't really fit. It's like they forcing it. You know what I'm saying? And then you will see most of the times that the name will be missing off, whereas like say Aquarius would be at, like say like the sign would be there, the Aquarius would be there, but he doesn't have a name. So it's like he's nameless, right? So I seen that in plenty of books to where they don't know his name, right? Either it fell out, is missing, and whatever. You know what I mean? So what I think, to even why they must have even probably changed Aquarius to be some type of water bearer or whatever the case may be, is because remember when reading the myths of like Hades, for example, right? They were scared to say his name, right? So Hades is not even really his name. It's just the place where he's supposed to be dwelling at. You know what I mean? So they were so scared to, if they even think about him, whatever, or either have his depiction up, that, you know, he will comfort them. You know what I'm saying? And bring them down to the underworld and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And then we also, you know, read that Hades is really not even actually the god of death, right? They say it's Thanatos, right? He's supposed to be just be, you know, there to maintain, you know, order there and stuff like that. Same thing with Arishka go, right? She don't have an image. You know what I'm saying? Her name just means Lady of the Great Below and stuff like that. She don't have an image. The River Styx, another one, right? Don't have an image. We just know that, you know, she's just supposed to be the river. It's, you know, we just read that. You know what I'm saying? It's depicted as a female goddess and stuff like that. And Hades is supposed to be down there, right? He's another deity. Who else you got? We got Nergal, right? The one who actually is supposed to have went into the underworld with Arishka Gul, and he became the king, and, you know, they was down there, whatever, and stuff like that. That one is kind of a I mean, I have a little theory about it, that he could be the Scorpio. And like I was saying, how as far as even though death and the dead is different, but then again, it's like, you know, they're both down there in the, you know what I'm saying? say like in the southern hemisphere of the zodiac or whatever the case may be, or the constellations. So I mean, in the way it does kind of go hand in hand, death and the dead. So I could pretty much maybe understand why. You know what I'm saying? Now, when it comes to Osiris, for example, right? There's plenty of like different types of constellations that he'll get linked to, and even stars, right? He's even the sun, for example. So we know that they say he's the sun. They'll say that Osiris is actually Orion. They'll say that Osiris is actual the Canopus star, right? And Argo. Then they say that that his boat, right? He was transported in his boat and so on and all that, right? In my personal opinion, I think that Osiris is actually, I think he's Aquarius because they have Osiris actual, also actually pictured as a canopic jar. You know what I mean? Now, whatever time period this is, and then of course we've seen Osiris as being like in the mummy form and stuff like that. But the canopic jar is one that really stands out, right? Again, the reason why the Canopus situation and the Aquarius is kind of like a juggle for the simple fact that I'm gonna show you right now. So here in this Babylonian cuneiform translation text, right? So I got on the top, for example, on the left side is the translated cuneiform, and then on the right is the English of this translated cuneiform, right? You can say the same thing for the bottom, right? So for example, right, number 62 on the top, right, Gula, and then it says Eridu. Now to the right in the English, right, it says the Great One. We know that Aquarius is the Great One, right? It says Ea, right? We know that's Enki. So this is the 15 stars of Ea, right? This is the southern hemisphere of Enki's domain, right? Then it says Eridu, right? So we go down to the next one. It's the same thing, just different English. And then now it's telling you the stars of the constellations. So the second one, right, Gula Nunki, which is also Eridu, right? It says the Great One, Ea, the star of Eridu, the city Ea, Aquarius, and Canopus. Right? So whenever you see these constellations with the cuneiform lists right here, Aquarius and Canopus is always grouped together. Right? So just to give you another example, hold on. So here you go, another one on the top of this map right here, right? The Great One, Ea, and it says and the star, right? And the star constellation below appears in one description. Gula Nunki Gula Eridu, right? You see Aquarius, then you see Eridu at the bottom. It says the star of Eridu, the city. Then it says A Pupus or Puppus. So that would be Canopus, right? That's the brightest star in the Argo constellations, Canopus. So down here, we have a little map joint that I got from a book too, right? So the winter solstice, you see that is Aquarius there. So I got a circle And the summer solstice, you see right there circled, would be cannabis, right? So you see the boat. Let me zoom a little bit, right? So you see the boat, and you see the man, right, with the pump pole. So that's supposed to be Enki's boatman, right? So we know from what's that? Enki in the World Order, right? He talked about his boatman, and he's holding a pump pole. So mind you, that's the boat, right, of cannabis. So that's Argo. Over here, we got Aquarius and stuff like that, right? So you see the water and stuff like that coming out of him. You see two deities on each side of him, and then real tiny, you see his spirits and stuff like that, right? So let me show you another thing. So I zoomed in and I cropped it out so you can see a little bit more. So on the left and the right of it, right, it's another deity spirit, right, that I got from another book. So I'm gonna show you that real quick. So it's talking about the overflowing water jars and stuff like that, right, in the plant. So it's basically saying that it's coming from heaven, here, and stuff like that. That, as you can see, it says Aquarius, right? The later ladder constellation belongs to the way of Anu. So whatever time period, I guess that, I guess when Aquarius was in the Anu zone, but we know that Aquarius is in the Ea zone, as we just read from the the cuneiform text and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's basically talking about angels and stuff like that. So we could still say, spirits, if you want to call them angels, or so on, right? So it's a juggle as far as if these angels is actually, like, say, in the underworld, but then the Sumerians don't, basically, from what I actually understand and read, that everybody goes supposed to go into the underworld. You see what I mean? So I can't really confirm for a fact that, where it says here, the heavens. I don't know if it's a fact or not, but I do know the underworld is basically a fact when it comes to their, like, I guess folklore or their mythology and stuff like that. We know that it's said that everybody goes to the underworld, right? But we still see spirits in there. So I'm gonna show you another it's from a moon mansion of the Arabics, right? Where Aquarius is, where they got Aquarius at, and let's see what it says on that. So this is just like the bottom half from Capricorn to Pisces, for example, but as you see number 25 to 26, right, you see Aquarius and stuff like that. I can't remember exactly what the top is saying to where this classification is being presented here. But as you can see, it says the angels and the jinn. You know what I mean? So the jinns are supposed to be what, in the Arabic, I think they're supposed to be like what, smoke and fire or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the angels are supposed to be. Maybe light or whatever. But remember when we read about Ea and stuff like that, right? Being able to, he could cast spells and so on, and omens and such, and he deals with spirits and stuff like that, right? So again, a spirit is basically energy or light or whatever, or you know what I'm saying, out of a body. You know what I mean? So we're dealing with Aquarius now at the same time, right? So we're dealing with the dead, right? So dealing with the dead, we also got to be dealing with spirits. You know what I'm saying? The unseen and stuff like that, right? The shadow world or the shadow realm, like they be saying. You know what I mean? So we really seen in the picture that we seen the spirits, we seen I guess if you want to call it the angels, with the water. We know that I guess in the Bible when Jesus said that I'll pour out my spirit, and some people relate that passage, I guess, to the Aquarius. Um, you know, so even that sounds like how is that possible, or whatever the case may be, right? Like just pouring out your spirit like as water. You see what I mean? So it's like we get like these kind of like either metaphorical, or it just be, again, as time goes on and people, whoever, right, they change things up a little bit, and people try to make sense of it, and even though people will run with it still, but it just seems sometimes like we'll just take your word for it, because it's either in the book or whatever the case may be, right? You know what I'm saying? So even what we read, when the guy was saying about Aquarius being the way of Anu, you know what I'm saying? And we know that Aquarius is in the way of Enki or Ea, because we read it from the cuneiform text. Like this is a text. This is a translated from Assyrians, and these people, like they been wrote this down, like so you know yeah, if we saying 4000 BC, and right, we in the year 2000 and change, right? So that's like 6,000 years. So of course things ain't gonna be the same. People, things are gonna get changed up here and there. Some, try to hold on to traditions for as long as possible, or whatever the case may be. But like I said, as far as like what's really interesting about Aquarius too, right? Aquarius is supposed to be ruled by Uranus, right? And its old ruler is Saturn, right? Uranus is actually the planet of change, right, and originality. So Aquarius seems to change so much that it's so hard to really pinpoint, like I said, like even the original, like what is it, like, you know what I'm saying? So remember I did a video as far as Aquarius being the mighty man. So but that has to deal with like Egyptian, and whoever was doing what they was doing in I guess in that time period, or whatever the case may be. But I guess fear is something that makes people do things to where they would try to do their best to get rid of the problem. You know what I'm saying? So Aquarius has many different characteristics as far as like rebelliousness, right? Which would be a problem to whoever. So I mean, we've heard and even seen like in movies to where it's like, what's that, 300, when Xerxes was like how he would erase Leonidas, I guess, like whole existence out of history. You know what I'm saying? Remember King Akhenaten, right? When he did the monotheism thing, and he's worshiping the Aten, and he started destroying everybody's or the old way or the old order. And then when the old order regained back its power, they just destroyed every single thing of King Akhenaten. And like the only reason why he even got brought back up is because little pieces of his stuff been found and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? As far as rubble, like, you know, his name's not on the wall and nothing like that, right? It's found in the rubble, whatever. So again, Hades, right? They were scared to mention his name, so get rid of it. Like we don't want no images of him and nothing like that. Like, you know, so that's what this is what happens. So even though, you know, we dealing with a constellation, but we know that these constellations have power, these seasons, right? We know that the power is real. You know what I mean? And to basically forget about it and to change it up to where, like, you know, people won't be really, right? The energies and stuff probably will still be there, but, you know, you could blame it on somebody else, for example, or you won't really know where it's coming from, or they'll say like, yeah, it's the devil or whatever, right? So that's what I think. I think that, you know, again, you know, they changed up Aquarius because they was afraid. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you got people that's really terrified of that type of stuff. Like, you know, especially like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you start thinking about your end and you start saying to yourself like, man. And then if you know that there's actually a deity that actually, you know what I'm saying, supposed to deal with that, or you don't know where you're gonna go after you pass, you know what I'm saying? It is kind of terrifying. You know what I'm saying? And plus you don't want to be reminded of it, like, you know, after you kind of snap out of it, you know, or you wake up in the morning and you tend to forget because you start doing other things or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So that's not really like in your conscious. It might be in your subconscious, but not, it don't be in your conscious. So you just go about your day, then, you know, probably like a few months or years later, like you go back into that state and you start panicking and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? But you know, like, again, I think that's what happened. I think you know, the fear, the troubleness, and so on, and you know, Aquarius got demoted, right, to this simple type of like weird individual, you know, damn near naked and stuff like that, with a skimpy towel on, with water jars, whatever, pouring water into a fish mouth. Like, just doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? Especially after everything that I just done read. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't even sound anything like what I just described Aquarius to be. Or you could just basically see like his modern type of description, right? Not even close. You know what I mean? So let's see what else we got, and we're gonna end this. So here I forgot to show you the law, as far as it being an earthen vessel and stuff like that, a vessel of natural symbol of fullness. Remember the gula, right? So, and then I showed you the canopic jar. You know, so remember the canopic jar, the gula. It was telling you about the water in the plant and stuff like that. So we got happy. You know, they got Aquarius is happy. He's supposed to be the Nile god. Like, this is another situation right here, right? To where the Nile is supposed to actually start rising, like, say, like when Sirius, right? is rising. You have a constellation, or I guess who is it? Anukit, right? Anukit is another goddess of the Nile. She hardly is ever mentioned, and she's basically supposed to be, from what I think, is her actually her is Eridu, right? They got her in the Eridu position, right? She's kind of like resembling Aquarius to a certain degree, right? She got the two jugs on hand and whatever, right? So I can't remember exactly, like, I guess like the first catacombs and stuff like that. It's supposed to actually take place in, I guess, is it Nubia? Right? Somewhere out of Egypt, as far as the border. We know Egypt is in Africa, but we know as far as like out the border and stuff like that, right? Now, I think because Anuka is said to actually be a Nubian goddess, right? She's supposed to be, because the first catacomb, I believe, or what now it actually starts down in Nubia, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if that's the actual name that is being used, if it's Nubia, but I know that it starts from down there. So I'm thinking maybe because Happy is supposed to be, he's primarily an Egyptian god. I think that's probably why he's getting all the accolades and stuff like that, because I guess they don't want to give Anukit, like, because she's a Nubian goddess, that much credit for actually really being the one who's pouring out the Nile, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Because in another book it says that by the time, I guess, the season, right, in Egypt, when it gets to Aquarius, it says that the Nile is at its lowest. So I'm saying to myself, like, well, if the Nile is at its lowest when it gets to the Aquarius season, how is Aquarius supposed to be happy, the god of the Nile? You know what I'm saying? If it's at its lowest, I mean, to me that doesn't make any sense. Again, it makes sense that Anuket is really the goddess, of the Nile, as far as, like, it starts be, the beginning of it and stuff. And I guess it gets to a certain, like, height, and besides, like, the droughts, because some, it'll be like some years of droughts where the Nile doesn't really actually even rise or whatever like that, or to a certain height. So I know the dry season and stuff like that. I know, in Egypt, and the Aquarius season around then, and again, like, the Nile's supposed to be at its lowest and stuff like that. So I don't know. It could just be made up. You know what I'm saying? But the way how to even have Happy, like, how he's even looking, I mean, you would think, like, yo, all right, he look like he's some type of ritual. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's pouring out libation or whatever, right? So that's what it just looks like to me. You know what I'm saying? And then he's supposed to actually be in the other Egyptian plains fair, right? He's a canopic jar. You know what I'm saying? And then again, they try to make it seem like the canopic jar has something to do with the Nile, and how I guess in the Chaldeans, they must have was going to some battle, and they put water inside of the jar, and then they brought it somewhere. I guess they was beefing with the fire god or something like that, and the fire melted the wax off the canopic jar, and the water started coming out of it, and put the fire out. Like, I mean, These things just sound mad crazy. Like it's like it's made up stories, just like to make these things. You know what I'm saying? Because either they didn't know, and they just made up their own little like, you know, interpretation or story and stuff like that, just to make it sound good or whatever, or just to come up with something. But still in all, you could say it's still my opinion, but I don't think that this person right here, as far as I think he was either forced to be happy, the water god and stuff like that, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? If that season when the Nile is at its lowest, but then he's supposed to be happy, the water god, and he's how is he can't provide no water if the water's at its lowest when it gets to Aquarius season. You know what I'm saying? So besides all that though, as far as the cannabis situation, or the Aquarius being on this side and the cannabis being on the other side, you know what I mean? And as far as the boat is concerned, and Osiris being on the boat, and who was actually the pilot of the boat, and so on, we know that I just showed you that Enki, his boatman with the pump pole, you know what I mean? Aquarius is shown as the candlepick jar. We know that Osiris, he was pictured as a candlepick jar. You know what I'm saying? Some people say that Osiris is actually canopus or whatever, like, you know what I mean? Being on the boat or whatever. But we know that Aquarius is supposed to be, we've seen a lot of death themes, right? You know what I'm saying? Or the dead, I should say. You know, and it will only make sense, you know what I'm saying, that Osiris, he has to be Aquarius. There's no doubt about that. To me, you know what I'm saying? Especially again in the winter, in the winter, right? Because first of all, the Canopus star can't even be seen in Egypt. You know what I mean? Even in America, you can't. I've never seen Canopus a day in my life. I've never seen that star a day in my life. And I think the only time you can even actually either you can see it or anywhere else, whatever, you have to probably be like in Australia or something like that, or somewhere in the Pacific, in order for you to actually see the Canopus star. Maybe even India or something like that. But as far as here, and definitely not over there in Egypt, whatever like that. So wherever they must have even got these stories from somebody else, from say either even behind America, as far as like the Pacific, you know what I'm saying, or somebody from what was that, Middle East and India and these places like that, you know, because there's no way they could have seen that. Even the Greeks and the Romans, you know what I'm saying. So they had to have got it either from somebody else, and they put their own spin to it, because I mean, you can't really elaborate on something about something that you can't even see, unless you're getting it from somebody else. You know what I'm saying? But overall, man, you know, again, it starts from the winter solstice. You know what I'm saying? As far as 4,000 BC, Aquarius was in the winter solstice, and the descriptions and stuff that has been explained, it told you Aquarius about being in the winter solstice. Is telling you about the dead, And, you know, and it just makes complete sense that, you know, you have an urn or you have a jar for either the deceased, the ashes, or even the what's that, the canapa from Peru. They was actually, you know, creating those things, you know, for the deceased. We read about the bottomless pit, the underworld, the river of the underworld. You know what I'm saying? There's basically no getting around that. There's no getting around that. You know what I mean? Leo, for example, right? Summer solstice, right? The sun is at its highest, is its strongest. Is Aquarius is all the way in the bottom. In the winter solstice, where the sun is at its weakest. You know what I'm saying? Aquarius is anciently ruled by Saturn, right? We know that Saturn is supposed to be the planet of rest. We know winter is the season of rest. You know, we read all that, you know. So I'm just gonna just end it right there, man. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, there's not too many people know about that. As far as the people who actually wrote it and people who did maybe read the book or read a few of these books, and you know, it's not like they put out any type of blog or something like that, and be like, yo, I just discovered something new, or whatever the case may be, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But I can't say if that's Aquarius in its entirely true form. Like, as far as I said, I made the video with the mighty arm, mighty man, with the strong arm. You know what I'm saying? But you know, we had different sides to, you know, a zodiac. You know, you have different characteristics. You know what I'm saying? So remember, we read about the acts, right? The executions and stuff like that. So, you know, we see the guy with the arm up, and he got the, you know, he got the club, or it could be an axe. It could be some type of weapon. You know what I'm saying? Or it could even be just a ruler. You know what I'm saying? It could either be a ruler, because it's no fact that, you know, the Egyptians had this, you know, guy grabbing people by the hair, and that they were beating them with the club and all that. There's really no fact of that. You know what I'm saying? To exert his dominance and stuff over other nations, whatever. There's really no fact to that. I mean, we read stuff that, but you know what I'm saying? There's really no proof, 100% proof that this was actually happening. You know what I mean? I think it was a constellation, and you know, they was just trying to explain something to us about, you know, or whatever the case may be. Even the same thing with Pharaoh in the Bible, right? Pharaoh allegedly drowns in the Red Sea with his horses and stuff like that, and his men, right? Pharaoh, another one who doesn't have a name. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else in the Bible has a name except for Pharaoh. Pharaoh is just called by Pharaoh, right? That's all. And you know, he looks like the mighty man, you know, in the Egyptian constellation, the old one, you know, which is supposed to be, you know, in Aquarius. Is he's still in that watery region, right? You got Pegasus is right, like, you know, right there. You know what I'm saying? So Pharaoh, right? His heart was hard and stuff like that, and he was basically stubborn, whatever the case may be, right? And God supposedly had split the Red Sea, the the Israelites, I guess, they was able to, get past, and then God ends up closing the Red Sea over Pharaoh. Well, there's not even the fact that Pharaoh even actually died in the Red Sea, or drowned, whatever. But okay, let's say his men and the horses, or whatever the case may be, right? His soldiers and stuff. Um, and that location, right? If that constellation is actual really Pharaoh, I mean, the story makes sense because he's right there. You know what I'm saying? In the watery region, he's supposed to be he's in the Aquarius region. You know what I'm saying? Pegasus is right there. Pegasus is a horse. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we might try to like dig into that a little deeper some other time. But basically, my point, is also like, another deity or person without a name. You know what I'm saying? I guess like either another headache. You know what I'm saying? People that was fearing, another individual, and then that constellation it exists in Egyptian, but as far as like modern, he's not there no more. You know what I'm saying? If I didn't read none of this stuff right here, you would have never even known that Aquarius has something to do with the dead or even the underworld. You know what I'm saying? So that's exactly what I'm talking about. So to probably even say like, okay, well, what if we do start bringing this back up, right? Or what if, let's say Aquarius get his shine back? What would actually change? What would be the significance now? What would Aquarius be actually be about? Like how could anything change? What would change? You know what I'm saying? One thing I could probably actually say is that let's just say Aquarius, right, now we all supposed to be spirits, right, and having the human body experience, what they say, right? But when you think about it, right, a lot of us, as far as humans, right, have spirits of animals. So if your zodiac is an animal or whatever, right, your spirit, you have a spirit animal or animal spirit in the human body. So it's like you were an animal having a human body experience, right? Now, if Aquarius is actually supposed to be like a dead spirit, it's like a dead spirit having a human body experience. If that made any sense, you know what I'm saying? So we only humans in as far as like in the physical, but in the spirit form, like we're totally different. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's like, for example, right? If you're a Leo, I always use Leo for example because Leo's probably like the only one that actually you can see like, yo, this motherfucker looks like a lion. You know what I'm saying? Or a cat or some shit. So, right? They got the lion spirit, right? They look just like one. But if you realize, right, there's no animal that actually looks like a human being. Now, some people might say, well, a monkey or whatever is close enough, or whatever the case may be, right? But if anything, it'll be the other way around. You see what I mean? So I'm saying that to say this. A lot of us be saying that, yeah, we're spirits having a human body, human experience, but It's a possibility that every spirit is not actually a spirit. It could be animals. It really could be animals. It could either be animals or just say, okay, if your constellation, your zodiac is just, you know what I'm saying, the characteristics of the human experience or whatever like that. But then again, you might have a say whatever type of light spirit in you, whatever like that. But so this is why a lot of signs can't really get along with each other and stuff like that, because you're really dealing with different animal spirits, man. Or you could say animal zodiacs, right? In the human having a human body experience, I should say, whatever. But as far as Aquarius, for example, right? Yeah, you use a spirit, probably the only spirit out of all of them. So when people be like, "Yeah, Aquarius is strange," and this, that, and the third, it's a spirit. It's, you know what I'm saying? Probably closest to human than maybe all the other ones. Because all the rest of the other ones is either besides Virgo and probably in Gemini. Virgo's supposed to be a female, and Gemini's supposed to be a set of twins or maybe fraternal or whatever. You know what I mean? So it could be any type of besides them three. Probably the only three humans out of the whole what you call it. But unfortunately, Aquarius is probably the dead one. You know what I'm saying? He's the dead one. So um so yeah, man, I'm gonna end it right there, man. I've been rambling long enough. But so I'm gonna say this is part two, man. Right? This is part two of Aquarius. What is Aquarius, right? So part one was the mighty man, and part two is the dead man. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna end it right here, man. So that's what it is, man. This is what you get.